Okay, everybody, welcome to episode 2, Leading Great Conversations. Our first unit here is going to be on storytelling and affirmation. This is really the basis of everything else that you guys are going to do in your group. Everything starts with storytelling and affirmation. So let me ask you a question. If you were going to measure length, what unit of measure would you use? And you'd say, well, Micah, I'm probably going to use like inches or feet, miles, whatever. And I said, okay, what if you're going to measure weight? What would be the unit of measure for weight? Well, weight, you'd probably use, pounds or kilograms or something like that. What if you were going to measure volume? How would you measure volume? All right, you're thinking, well, volume is probably going to be, actually, it's a trick question. I can tell a lot about you by how you answer it, because you're either going to say gallons or liters, or if you're a musician, you're going to say decibels. I measure volume in decibels. So. But what about this? How would you measure community? What would be your unit of measure for community? And the answer is the unit of measure for community is stories. Stories are the unit of measure for community. The unit of measure for community is stories. And so you think, well, how does that work? Well, it works like this. The degree to which you know each other's stories, that's the degree to which you feel connected to people in your group. All right? Or just people in general. The degree to which you know me is the degree to which you know my stories. All right? And there's three kinds of stories that matter, all right? Three kinds of stories. The first story is the personal narrative, all right? The second is the interpersonal narrative, and the third is the meta-narrative. If we're going to be, upstanding academic with it, we'd say the personal narrative, the interpersonal narrative, and the meta-narrative. Those are the three stories that matter. But we don't really talk like that usually, at least I don't. So we're going to say the three stories that matter are my story, okay, our story, and God's story. Those are the three stories that matter in your group. My story, our story, and God's story. So anytime we can share those stories, that's going to be good for our group as a whole. Okay? Here's why this matters. I'll tell you a story. I had a conversation one time with two friends of mine. Same conversation, but it went very differently. Both of these guys, similar in age, similar socioeconomically, both kind of middle class, white, Caucasian, 20-something-year-old guys. And I see the first guy, Phil, and I say to him, Phil, what you up to tonight? And he says to me, we're in the lobby at our church. He says, well, I'm having dinner with my parents. I'm having dinner with my dad tonight. And he had just moved out recently. He had dinner with his parents several times a week because he couldn't cook. And so it was a pretty standard thing for him to say, I'm having dinner with my dad. So for him, that means nothing normal, just the same old, same old. But I said to my friend John, hey, John, man, what are you doing tonight? And he said, well, I'm having dinner with my dad tonight. I said, whoa, stop the train. John had about 3 months earlier gotten engaged. And the day that he got engaged, his dad went to his mom and said, I'm leaving you for our secretary. And his dad knew. Anyway, that's a long story. So they hadn't spoken in 3 months. And so when John says to me, I'm having dinner with my dad tonight, I go, whoa, this is a significant thing. We need to talk about this. And so I pull him over and we, debrief what's going on. But here's the thing. Both of those guys said the exact same thing to me within 10 minutes of each other, and they meant radically different things by them, okay? And the only reason I knew that something was different between those two stories between those two responses is because I knew both of their stories. So if you don't know someone's story, okay, and they disclose something personal, you will miss it. That's how this works. If somebody shares something in your group and you don't know their story, you won't know what they mean when they say it. All right. So if we don't know the stories of our group, we will not understand what they are trying to share with us. Okay. I know it sounds weird, but this is really true. If we don't understand the stories of our group, we don't understand our group. That's just how it works. Okay. So here's the rule I want you to understand. There's one rule. Every meeting starts with a story. Okay. Every meeting starts with a story. Always, no matter what, don't break this rule ever. Every meeting starts with a story. Okay. Now you think, well, Micah, this sounds kind of like Icebreakers. Is this like Icebreakers? Icebreakers are the thing, right? Kind of. Here's how Icebreakers works. Icebreakers work, I guess. The idea is that people come in frozen and they need a chance to warm up. All right? That's not incorrect. It's just incomplete. It's not wrong. It's just not all there is to say. Here's the reality. In a consumer economy, we are trained to believe that we are defined by our preferences. And so a lot of times icebreaker questions are preference-based. If you could be any animal, what would you be? Well, I'd be a lion. All right? We're trained to believe that we're defined by our preferences. The problem with this is, so the preferences we get into are like, what kind of music do you like? What kind of food do you like? What kind of activities do you like? The problem with this is this. Our preferences are more likely to divide us than unite us. So if you think about high school, and it's like, well, I can't hang with them. They listen to different music than I do. Or maybe that wasn't your experience in high school, but for a lot of us it was. That our preferences, especially in a consumer economy, are built around something to break us down into smaller groups that people can sell to. So our preferences are more likely to divide us than unite us. So if you walk into a group, just think about this. If you walk into a group and you say, man, I'm really happy to be in this group and this is my favorite activity. Well, if somebody is in there that has that, if the common interests are the basis of your community, you can only be in community with people who share your interests. So like if you walk in and you say, I really like to go camping, and that's how like you want to connect with people, and half the group wants to go loves camping, then you feel like, man, I got a lot in common with these people. But the rest of the group, you're like, I don't really have anything in common with those people. And that's what we're trying to avoid, okay? Here's the rest of the story. Even for those with whom you share interests, those shared interests will never be as powerful as shared stories. Shared stories win. I just need you to trust me on this, all right? So, conclusion, icebreakers are necessary, but all good icebreakers have an associated story, okay? But that's only half the story. Oh, story. That's only half the story. The secret sauce isn't just storytelling. It's storytelling and affirmation, okay? Because the question that everyone asks, there's a question everyone asks every time they come to group, and it's, do I really matter? Do I really matter? If I wasn't here, would anybody even notice? All right? Because I want you to consider this. Not everyone gets as much affirmation as you get, all right? Like when you wake up in the morning, your children rise and call you blessed. They walk in, they say, hi, Mom, hi, Dad. We just love being around you so much, and we are so glad to be your children. And when you drive to work, people actually pull out of your way because they're like, oh, it's just an honor to be on the same road with you. And when you go to the drive-thru, they just say, oh, well, just this one's on us. You just go right ahead. We just love you so much. When the cop pulls you over, he says, I just want you to know that was probably the best lane change I have ever seen. When you walk in the morning to work, the boss says to you, man, I just can't tell you how happy I am that you're here, and we just think that we're not worthy of your presence, okay? I know that's what your week is like, but most people, that's not what their week is like, okay? When I worked at McDonald's as a teenager, my very first job that I ever had was working at McDonald's. And there was a sign on the back drive-thru that said, smile. It may be the only smile that person sees today. And I remember my teenage cynicism. I thought, how terrible is your life if the only smile you get is at the drive-thru? But then here's what I finally realized. For a lot of people, life is pretty terrible. Like a lot of people actually acted like that was the only smile they were going to get that day. And so when they walk into group, Tuesday night, Thursday night, whatever, people walk into your small group, just you have to understand, they've spent the last week being told nobody asked you, nobody cares what you think, your opinion doesn't matter. And so you think that they're just going to walk in, sit down and discuss the Bible? It's not going to happen, okay? So affirmation is crucial. Affirmation is absolutely crucial, and it doesn't have to be complicated. Affirmation can be as simple as the group listened to me when I talked, they looked at me, nobody checked their phone, everybody made listening noises. You know what those listening noises are? It's like if you're talking to me and I go, yeah, those are listening noises. All right, somebody thanked me for sharing. That could be it. That could be all the affirmation that your group needs, that somebody needs. Affirmation can be more than that, A follow-up question is a great way to make people feel affirmed, that they actually feel like, oh man, my leader really was paying attention to what I said. He asked me a question, not in an interrogating way, but just in a friendly way. Somebody remembered what I said last week. I told them this story, and then people asked how it went. I got an honest compliment. People prayed for me. The hot seat, if you've ever done a hot seat, it's like every once in a while you take maybe a little bit of time in a group, and the whole group affirms a person. You can't get through it without, tears. But here's the thing you have to understand. Affirmation unlocks the door. It says it is safe to share. It is safe for me to tell the things that I want to tell in this group. And so after that, then you can do the other stuff you want to do. So together, these two actions make up the first step of every single group meeting, okay? People need to do this every time. You should start this way every week. Always start with storytelling and affirmation, okay? So that's all for episode 2, part 1. Next up, we're going to talk about the second shape we've talked about. We're going to talk about the baseball diamond. All right, so stay tuned.